Hi, welcome to Shop Talk Live. This is episode 320. It's been a few months since Vic was on an episode, and Ben and I decided it was long past due. We have him on. We had some really good questions this week. One being how to accessorize your bandsaw, and then we jump into this really subjective topic of what makes fine woodworking fine woodworking. It was really interesting to hear everybody's different perspectives on that. And then, of course, there's a lot of joking in between. It made for a really good episode, but before we jump into that, I wanted to remind you, registration is still open for the Woodworking Travel Tours, and that's open till July 17th. If you don't know what it is a 7-day trip through England guided by Woodsmith Magazine's Phil Huber and our own editor at Fine Woodworking, Anissa Capsalis. And you'll be visiting anything from the London School of Furniture Making to Chair Making Museum to Triton Tool Manufacturing Plant, which they'll be offering a free tool to whoever visits. It's just 7 days jam-packed full of woodworking, which sounds like an amazing time. I'll link more about that in the show notes below. Mike Michelli's e-learning course, Foundations of Finishing, is also available for registration for on-demand viewing on August 1st. It should be a lot of fun. In the meantime, let's get started. You want to just dive into the first one?
First is where we start.
All right, let's go. So this one's from John. He says, I recently moved into a bigger space and I have room for a proper shop. My first big kid tool is a 14-inch Laguna bandsaw, and for the foreseeable future, it'll be a Node table saw shop. So I'm curious how you all, and Vic in particular, accessorize your bandsaws. Is an outfeed table worth the trouble, or can I get away with a roller stand? Are there any must-have jigs to make up for my lack of a table saw? And Vic, you've got to answer this one first, for sure.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't think you need an outfeed table for the bandsaw, especially considering bandsaw tables seem to be at weird heights. Like the earlier Lagunas were like super, super low, and then some of them are like really tall, and it's like they're not. I don't know what the thought behind that is.
Yeah. But
they all seem like not the right height for me. And so they're either too tall or too short. So, and then if you were to put an extension on that, then you would end up having like an even larger horizontal surface that was not at a good height. So I would probably not do that. I use roller stands sometimes for longer material. And I find that that's really helpful. Although I did try out the bow fence.
The long fence?
Yeah, the long. Yeah, it's like and it has this two like sort of feet that clip onto each end, and it is then below on the fence, so your work rides on them. And of course, because they're at the bottom of the fence, they're level with your table.
It's like a fence tab, a table tab.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. I'm sure they've got an actual name for it, and it would be on the package, but I threw that away a long time ago. But yeah, they work actually remarkably well because it's just out far enough that, and you can move the fence, like you can have more on the outfeed than the infeed.
Okay.
Because the fence can be mounted anywhere. And so that worked surprisingly well. So like for resawing and things like that, I find roller stands are a funny thing. Like you can get them set up perfect, and then the second the wood touches them, it's like all of a sudden it's an inch too tall or something.
I get the same thing. It's like I get it set up awesome, and then I move it a foot for something. It's like maybe it depends on what shop you're in, but yeah, all of a sudden it's catching, and they're handy, but frustrating too.
Yeah, 100%.
Or if it's like one of the long roller ones, and it is askew, even in the littlest bit, so it's not perfectly perpendicular to the cut, it will pull the board the wrong, like away from the fence or whatever, and like it's a legitimate thing.
Michael Fortune did an article on a roller thingy that actually attaches to the bandsaw itself at like an angle, and then it's like always at the right spot.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what I've always meant to do is he has it. So like he cuts up a roller stand, like one of your normal roller stands, so that it is just one leg, and that gets attached with, so the legs on those things are generally, pipes or something like that. They come down and there's a perpendicular pipe, and that's how they stand there. There's two of those. He takes one of them off and attaches one of them to the bottom of the bandsaw. So it just pivots out when he needs it in place. So it doesn't take up any floor space, and it just folds down, and then he's got marks on it where it is at the right height for the bandsaw table. So it's always, in relation to the bandsaw, it's always in the same spot. It's never referencing off the floor. It's never referencing off anything other than the actual bandsaw itself.
And that makes sense because the table just isn't going to magically raise or lower on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that you sort of have to concern yourself about. The other thing I'm a big fan of are magnets, on like using things like those mag switches to create stops, because like if you're cutting the cheeks of a tenon or, something like that, it's nice to, just be able to like come up against the stop, flip it, come up against the stop, and then go from there. Mm-hmm. And I also have a decent miter gauge for my bandsaw. It didn't come with it because bandsaws don't come with decent miter gauges. Neither do table saws for that matter. But I got one that is like of a decent quality because sometimes I'll use it to like create a shoulder too. If your bandsaw is set up well, you can get a really clean cross cut with it. And so, yeah, but I mean, I don't have a lot of gadgets and things for my bandsaw. I basically, just, a good fence and make sure it's more important to have it set up properly than, you can get, drift defeating, fences and stuff, which is just, to my mind, that's just a way to separate you from your money. But, cause drift is just a bandsaw blade that's not sitting on the right spot in the crown. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think, there's not really, the roller stand, I like having push sticks around, because even though the bandsaw is quote unquote less dangerous, it's still, they use it to cut up meat at the butcher shop. So, it will do unmentionable things. But yeah, that's about it.
Do you have push sticks like dedicated to the bandsaw?
No, I usually use like a variation of a push pad, basically. If I've got the room, and then I actually end up going around the saw more often. So instead of like pushing from the front, I'll go like till I'm, almost at the blade, and then I'll just go around the saw and then just pull it through. I've always found that to be a lot more controllable.
Mm-hmm. I do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. It makes sense.
I do like the micro jig gripper for like resawing, because it has that 90-degree reference on it.
Right.
So you're able to like use the push pad, set the push pad down on the table, and you're getting like consistent pressure.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's really, I found that's helpful for at least like resawing.
Are you ever using like tall feather boards or anything when you resaw?
I didn't. No, not when I was doing a lot of shops on veneer. Not really. I think I've maybe used a feather board one time, but I have heard good things about them. I've never used one.
I have the bow one that looks like a big squeegee.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that works.
The resaw one, the tall one. Yeah.
Yeah. That works way better than a feather board.
We have one of those at the Fine Woodworking shop, and feel like we're missing a piece because I can't figure out how it fits onto the saw. Like it goes in the miter slot, right?
And then it should rotate and lock into the miter slot.
All right, I need to look at it. Yeah, I think we're kind of missing something on it. But I have the Bow. I think it's Bow as well. I mean, you would think this episode is sponsored by Bow. They're the ones with the foam finger feather boards. I really like those.
Yeah.
And at the shop we have the double stack of them. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think it'll give you maybe 3.5 inches of height. So I will use that at the bandsaw sometimes too, if I'm resawing. But the thing that I can't live without is the grout float push pad too at the bandsaw. That's always right there. The other thing that I use more than I would have ever thought, and this is another Michael Fortune bandsaw accessory, is he specifically uses salt bags from water softening salt. And he hangs one off the back of his bandsaw table just to catch offcuts. The little bits and bobs just get brushed right off the table into his bag, and then those get saved for firewood kindling.
Interesting.
I use chicken feed bags, or I just have a bucket lying on the ground. But like they're to me, with a bandsaw, there has to be something to catch those little teeny tiny offcuts. Yeah. Because otherwise they turn into the biggest small trip hazard in the shop, because they're the little nubs that you don't see, and you step on them and they send you weird. Mm-hmm. But
so if I buy chicken feed and keep the bag, can I give you the feed?
You can. I don't think that would be economic way of doing it, considering you live in Canada.
You're not in charge of my money.
No. You can do what you want. So I could send you empty chicken feed bags.
That
chicken
would be
feed bags are they're Tyvek. They're like
I'm wondering why this is specific to chicken feed bags.
Well, because I can't bring myself to throw them away, because this is like I don't know, the moment I got chickens, I turned into like a farmer where it's like everything has to have a second life, Mm-hmm. But the chicken feed Tyvek bags are just, I empty them out. I go, this is of substance. And now I have a pile of them that just get reused for all sorts of things. But mostly they're used for storing kindling now.
Well, now that you say that, the food that we buy for Bruno comes in like a 25 kilo bag.
Yeah, same size.
And a kilogram is a metric measurement that y'all might not be familiar with, but it's a woven bag as well.
Yeah.
So that maybe I can use that.
Yeah. See?
Huh. I've been throwing those out like a sucker.
Yeah. But the Michael Fortune thing really is brilliant though, because he just has it like attached to the back of his table somehow. And so like all those little nubbins just fall right in there, and it's a perfect place to just automatically get things stored.
I feel like you could have one of those at the chop saw too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So is that in, like, he has the bag in conjunction with the roller outfeed roller thing?
Yeah.
Nice.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kick myself in the butt for saying this. So there was COVID time. We were doing webinars, big time webinars. And Michael did a webinar on like his 10 favorite bandsaw jigs. And I've been meaning to take those individual videos and post them to the website. We're going to make that happen, Amanda. It's not going to be done by Friday when this episode comes out, but for the next episode, it'll be done, because they are gold. All right.
Nice. Make a note.
I like that.
Are you a push stick user, Amanda?
Yes, whenever possible.
Do you have a favorite kind other than the gripper?
I cut a little notch out of a piece of MDF, 3/4 MDF. And that way, it's not precious. Yeah. But I do like the grout floats. That's the other option. So, but yeah, at the table saw, I just do the MDF because I'm like, I cut through this a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't feel precious at all. And I can make it wide enough that my hands away from the blade where I feel comfortable. And yeah, it's just a quick process. So that's what I do, at least.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Those work really well. I used to make them out of 2x6 offcuts because it was like super wide and like you could nibble that thing away forever, but because it was fairly thick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it doesn't have to be MDF, but yeah, it's
no. Yeah, or maybe does it need to be MDF? Is this what we're going to take a firm stance on?
I guess the reason I choose MDF is that, like, it doesn't tend to like break if you catch a certain, like, it'll get pretty thin before it breaks. So,
but what if it gets wet, Amanda?
What are you doing? What is everyone doing right in their shops that they're so worried about MDF getting wet?
I know. It's can't like veneer MDF. What if it gets wet?
The moment you mention MDF, there's like always somebody in the comment section about like, oh, it's going to get wet. And you're like, what are you doing, dude?
Do you work at a water park? Like what?
You say that, but like a few weeks ago.
It turns out it's always been Amanda in the comment section.
Well, this is a new development. So we have printmakers above our studio.
Okay.
And I guess they were like washing something or whatever, but I got to the shop one day and I look at my panner router and I have like, I have the Festool, the little contractor saw underneath it.
Yeah.
And so I guess water had come down through the floor onto the panner router, like the aluminum bed, and then all over the like Festool. And I was like, okay, this is a rare exception that water is going to be in your shop, but could.
Well, thank God nothing was made out of MDF.
Yes. Yeah. It's just aluminum and plastic, but it could happen.
But it doesn't swell. It's not a sponge.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. It takes quite a bit to.
You got to like I actually had a piece of MDF lying outside for a while. We're bringing stuff to the curb and needed a sign that just said free. So I just used a piece of MDF and then that just got stuck on the backside of the shop where no one could see it from the road because I'm classy. And it stayed out there for months and it took a long time for it to really degrade. So
I find particle core is even worse.
Oh yeah. Cause that
particle core, like it senses water and it's like, brr.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Totally. So bandsaw accessories, does this count, but lighting?
I was going to bring that up.
Always lighting.
One of those little LED, like they have a little magnet base.
Sewing machine light.
Yeah.
That's what they sell them on Amazon, yeah.
I didn't know what they were called, but yeah, those are super useful. Yeah.
Sewing
Ben's
machine
never
light?
heard of this.
I didn't know that it was called that. Little magnetized base on a little arm that has an LED. It's really great.
Yeah, mine is like a bar about that long. It's probably got like 10 or 12 LEDs in it. And you can put it like, and some people actually hardwire them into their tool so that when you turn your tool on, the light comes on.
Smart.
I'm not smart enough for that, but some people do that.
I don't like that though, because I think it needs to be for setup. Like you're moving the fence, you're.
Oh, that's true.
You know, it's like you don't want to have the blade running in order to turn the light on.
Chicken.
I have two. As you can see it in the back there, I have two IKEA gooseneck lights, and they're on a light switch, and they are rigged up with all sorts of pieces of wood to hold things in place. But that works really well. I saw Chris Gochner one time use like a headlamp, and or no, that was on the drill press, but he put the headlamp around the post of the drill press. And that is brilliant to me because then that puts the light right where you need it on the drill press. But that would probably work for the bandsaw too.
But why wouldn't you just keep it on your head? Because the thing's designed to illuminate where you're looking. It's the whole point of it.
Well, not all of us are that clever, Vic.
Well, I don't know that I'm particularly clever considering it comes with a head harness.
Man, it's been too long since we had Vic on the podcast, honestly.
I'm just saying, like, I have one of those, you know, like, because I'm old, I have the little...
The reader.
Yeah, me too.
You know? And then,
I think Amanda's the only one who doesn't need one of those yet.
Mine has a light.
Yeah.
And so I can point the light at it, and, like, that is amazing. And so I actually tried to dovetail with a headlamp on, but it turns out that because your work has to be so close to you as you're working, even at a low setting, the light, it just washes everything out. And you can't. So it just need, like, maybe if I were to put like an ND filter or something in front of it and like cut the light a little bit, but I couldn't, it didn't work well for close up stuff. But yeah, for bandsaws or machines, I'm going to try that.
Plus you'll look cool.
That light is not going to make me any less or more cool than I already am, Ben Strano.
I have to, I mean, speaking of looking cool, I am currently one mod deep into changing up my little headlight magnifier thing. But I need to come up with a second mod because my coif of hair, depending on whether it's up or down, affects the fitting of my headlamp, my magnifier thing. So I'm dreaming up like an elastic band situation that gets attached to the back of it, and there will be a follow-up on this, but because, you know, if my hair's up in the thing, whatever. All right. I'm going to edit that part out.
I don't think you should. I think that's important. There's a lot of people who have different types of hairstyles and don't realize that they can modify stuff.
Oh, I was going to I was going to agree with this. Like, the hair is a thing. It's a variable for sure.
Yeah, like you know, if your hair is down, there's hearing protection that works better with it down than up, or which that's another thing. I'm looking at my bandsaw in my Zoom thing right now, and I leave earmuffs on that bandsaw because that to me is the machine that gets to me hearing wise faster than anything else, except a router maybe. That particular frequency really tires my hearing out. So I leave the hearing protection on that saw, so I never have to look for it. And that's another accessory that I think is a must-have for bandsaws is hearing protection.
I really hope John got what he was looking for there, because we sort of meandered around his question a little bit. But
I think he was looking for like jigs and Amanda, do you ever do the thing where you do like the zero clearance cut in a piece of MDF?
I just did that because I was making a bunch of wedges. Yeah, that's super useful. But yeah, it's just literally MDF, you know.
Yeah, just use 1/8 inch and put it up against, and then put a piece of tape over it and keep going.
It isn't like a table saw though, where you could spend a day making a bunch of accoutrement for it, right? So do you have any sleds lying around that, like circle cutting jigs? Or is that the type of thing? For me, if I need to cut a circle, it's like, I grab a stick and I make it real quick and then I throw it away.
Same.
Yeah, I don't hold on to the like particular stuff.
Whereas like throwing away a table saw sled like hurts my soul, the very thought of it. But for the bandsaw, I don't think it gets any dedicated special made jigs in my shop.
One thing that I would hold on to if I had it, I haven't used this in forever, but is a pattern jig for the bandsaw. Vic, I don't know if you've used this, but where you notch out a space for your bandsaw blade to sit in, You can offset it however much you need, and then the pattern you use rides up against that.
And then you can keep the pattern attached and go over to the router table and clean it up. Yeah.
That would be a dedicated jig I would keep for the bandsaw.
I actually have a commercially made one.
Oh, I saw. Who makes that?
Woodpecker.
Woodpecker.
It is Woodpecker?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Saw that recently.
Although I had to modify the tip because they only make the tips as wide as 1/4 of an inch. And I'm like, my go-to bandsaw blade is 3 TPI 1/2 inch. And so all I did was because the fingers are like cast into the plastic, you can just cut it shorter and because it's a triangular shape, of course it gets wider as you cut it shorter. And then I just basically rejigged it so that it would fit my 1/2 inch blade.
It's perfect.
But that works like a charm. Yeah. And then it holds on with magnets and you put it on I put it on the left side of the blade so that I can run my piece on the right side.
That's super smart. Also, it's good, like bringing up the actual blade you use. That's an accessory technically too. And like you said, a 1/2 inch 3 TPI is going to handle most things.
Right. And that was again, Michael Fortune. Like when I studied at Rosewood, he taught and he was like, this is the only blade you need. And so I tend to agree.
Yeah, that's what we use most of the time. Unless I'm doing like serious resawing, then I go to 3/4. But yeah, it's 1/2 inch is perfect.
And I've never tried it. I've never tried going up to a bigger blade. Like my bandsaw can take a 3/4, I think is the biggest it'll take. And some people swear by those carbide tooth blades and stuff. And I don't know. To me, that's just too much curve. Like the whole point of the bandsaw is like you can get away with a pretty narrow curve.
I don't think the curve is all that much different.
No?
Tim Coleman is a believer of the carbide
okay.
blades. I believe he's a Timberwolf fan. But the kerf is like, if it is wider than, a regular set blade, it's negligible at best. And I mean, I'm sure there's definitely, thinner kerf blades than, not all bandsaw blades are exactly the same. I just don't think I could stomach the cost of a $200
they're expensive,
blade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially something, it's got a weld and, we've all had a bandsaw blade pop and that just feels like it could happen. And then you're really pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they're usually pretty big too, like those carbide tooth blades. Like you can't I don't think you can get a 1/2 inch carbide tooth blade. I think they have to be pretty big. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm making stuff up now, but but the 3 TPI 1/2 inch blade, that's been my go-to blade. I've tried others. I know a guy up here in Canada who has a company that manufactures really good bandsaw blades, and I'm like, can I try it with this amount of set instead of this amount of set? And like he indulges my crazy thoughts, because it's like Michael Fortune always talked about. This episode sponsored by Michael Fortune. He would always talk about his. He had 3 states of blades, so he had brand new blades, blades that were sharpened once, and blades that were sharpened twice.
Okay.
And as you sharpen a blade, you lose set.
Okay.
And so then he keeps the second sharpened blades for cutting joinery because they leave almost like a perfect surface behind.
Oh, wow.
And so then I discovered that if you buy a meat and fish blade, it has no set. Because you don't want set when you're cutting meat, and you're not worried about the blade, like the meat closing on the curve. Mm-hmm. So it's got no set to it. And so like for just doing like short runs like you would on a tenon or like if you cut your tails or dovetails that way or whatever, you get very little of the sort of, the tooth striations.
Wow. That's I would have never thought of that.
I'm thinking way too much about it now, though.
Right? That's going to live rent free in your head for weeks until you get one and try it.
Like, I guess the only thing that a meat blade could come in contact with that would be case hardened would be jerky.
Well, bone.
Case hardening, where it's like, different.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, right.
I got it.
Yeah, I didn't.
Thank you, Amanda.
That's good.
That needs to stay in.
It must have lost its efficacy up through the border or something.
Well, but also talking about Michael Fortune and his blades, I'm pretty sure he only like he orders blades from like this one place and requests this one employee do the welding.
Yeah.
See that?
He's like, I need Sean I only want blades that Sean welded or something. It's like, okay.
Well, but when it's a human thing,
around.
like it's not a CNC operation, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like some people are better at it than others.
Sure.
I mean, I don't go to that.
I don't want a blade I welded on Friday. I don't want a blade welded by the new person.
Though.
Yeah.
It is. When I was in Austin, we went to one place for bandsaw blades. And when the guy retired, just like after that, we just stopped using them because the weld would break more often than not.
Oh my
god. It is a human thing.
It's like when your barber retires, what do? Like,
just let it grow.
You just let it go, like Ben.
Start buying elastics for all your heads.
Right.
Woodcraft Supply knows that woodworking is more than just a hobby. It's your passion. And with Woodcraft's new everyday value, now it's a little more affordable. Woodcraft has lowered the prices on hundreds of essentials that woodworkers use every day, like Bessie clamps, Wood River hand planes, Type-Bond wood glue, dust collection fittings, and more. Check them out online at woodcraft.com or go to one of their 70-plus stores nationwide. It's just another way that since 1928, Woodcraft has been helping you make wood work.
Oh, yeah.
I have to get my
you asked if anybody else
right,
did, so I was just answering your question. You can go first if you
I'm
want,
just
Ben.
jazzed about this. I'm jazzed about having a smooth move that is so stupid.
Look what I can do. I'm Ben Strano.
This is like, and Vic, you know where I'm going because I texted you about it. Like, immediately.
This is a good one.
And I think your response was just wow, because it's really like this is next level dumb. But when in doubt, I'm your guy.
I hope you're not looking for arguments.
So, I 3D printed up a mortising template. I was making a how-to video on 3D printing this thing, and for this other thing, and the mortise that I made in the video turned out oversized, and I was like, huh, okay, that's a little weird. It was 15 thou over. I was like, that's a lot.
That's over.
And I sat there just thinking about it. I'm measuring stuff. I'm going, that shouldn't be that way. But maybe I just put a little too much English on it when I was routing the mortise. And I don't see how this happened, but okay. And I just went with it. And I just assumed I was the weak link here, but I assumed it was the way I was using the tool that was the weak link. And a couple weeks later, I pull out the router that I had used, and it was a Makita trim router. And the reason why I bought the Makita trim router is it accepts bushings. And I go to put a bushing in the plate, and I realized I had one screw holding the plate on. There's supposed to be 4.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have 4 screws in that plate, and I had 1. How is that acceptable at any point in my relationship with this tool? In my defense, this is the tool that gets screwed to piece of plywood to make the thing, so I'm constantly pulling these screws out. They are metric, so I don't have a whole bunch lying around. If there are any imperial screws, I have a huge supply on hand at all times, but I did not have spares of this one. So at some point along the line, I lost all but one of those screws. And I just want to tell the world, if you are down to one screw in your router plate, throw the last screw out.
Right.
One is worse than none, okay? Because if I had just thrown the last screw out, I wouldn't have used the router in that way. I would have never thought that this was going to work. The plate needed to be affixed to the bottom of the router. But somewhere along the way, I said, oh, I lost all three, but here's the one. I'll just keep it in there just for now, just to keep this screw safe. And everything I did with that router on the plate that way is just wildly inaccurate, and it's entirely my fault. And I have replaced the screws, and I bought extras, and I
feel like 15 thou out as a result of that sort of behavior is
pretty good.
Lucky.
I know.
I feel like you could have easily had that bushing like rip right into the bit as it was spinning like that. Oh, that could have been bad. Yeah, the big bad. Yeah. Yeah. That is as smooth of a move as I've done in quite a while. So now, if you need metric screws, just let me know.
I have them. I don't keep metric flathead screws on hand. Oh. I keep panhead metric screws on hand, and I will now be keeping metric flathead screws on hand as well. But
I just used my Makita trim router the other day and switched out the base for that domed one we've talked about before. And I'm like sitting here thinking, like, did I put the screws back in the bag?
That's awesome.
So thanks for reminding me. I'm going to check into that.
Yeah, you have to check that. That's funny.
Just blanket request to tool manufacturers. Screws like that, the holes should be through. They should be through tapped, so that I could just go out and buy 20 millimeter long screws, and they'll always be able to tighten down, so that when I use a thick base for something, I can just use the same screws. But as it is, 2 screw holes on that plate are through tapped and 2 are not through tapped. Right. And that's going to bother me. So
sounds like you're making excuses, but okay.
No, that was all me. What you got, Vic?
New favorite tool of all time for today is my 3D printer.
Woo! He finally did it.
I did it. I tried to figure it out. There has to be like a reason, right? It's like the reason I didn't consider a shaper until I heard Larissa talk about it. And then all of a sudden the light went on and I'm like, oh, you could do this with it. And then that started like snowballing, to the point where it's like, oh, okay. I hate making shop storage things. And I actually wrote a blog about it.
I just saw the title. And
you saw
it was something like that, yeah.
But I hate making stuff like that because it seems such like a waste of time. You know what I mean? Like I bought 2 of those metal rolling carts with the drawer system, mechanics typically would use, right? I bought 2 of those and put my miter station on top of that. And then now I have all of this storage and I have all of this stuff. And it's like the thought of making all of that cabinetry under there. No, I don't want to do it. And so I printed out the most ridiculous things. Like I haven't even designed any yet. I am just literally capitalizing on the fact that other people who are smarter than I am with Fusion 360 have designed stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's smart. So I printed out 10 trays, 5 of each, 150 mil, 125 for sanding discs. And they have like a little mounting screw situation that you mount onto the wall. And then I just have them all laid out, coarse at the bottom, fine at the top, and then a little hanging thing to put my sander.
Nice.
Slick.
And it's like, I used to go through, like I had this cabinet and there's like stacks of boxes of abrasives. And it's like, I'm looking for the 220 and I like, awful. And it's like, each one of these took like an hour to print. And now it's beautiful. It's elegant. Even a little flat space to put a little sticker that says 80, 120. It's so elegant. A tape holder that's designed for 2-inch thick tape. Mm-hmm. And so I printed out 10 of those because I realized I have 10 different tape that I use. I have 2-inch blue. I have 1-inch blue. I have 2-inch white and 1-inch white. I've got the stretchy 3M tape that you use for binding. Mm-hmm. I've got veneer tape. I've got gaffer's tape. I've got double-sided tape.
10 sounded like a lot, but I have all of these as well. And
right?
We're probably well past 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I printed 10 of these things out, mounted them to the wall, and now I look over, I grab the tape that I want. I'm not looking through a box of tape. It's like, so like if you're on, like right now, 3D printers are really sort of come down in price. They're a little bit more affordable. And I pulled the trigger and I'm like, and then I'm working with somebody who's much smarter than I am to learn Fusion 360. And once I start to be able to like come up with my own solutions, there's going to be no stopping me.
They're pretty dang cool.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about it.
I know.
Yes.
And you're part of the reason that I'm in it, because like I see the little things that you do, because you're always making robots with your kid and like you're printing stuff and you're like, coming up with solutions. And it's like, I mean, why go out and buy a thing, or why spend a bunch of time making a wooden thing when this
especially because wood is generally not the right medium for the things that we force it into,
It's true.
Yeah.
But that blog post you did, Ben, on like shop solutions that you use the 3D printer for, I was okay. I need one of those eventually. That's a really good tool to have to incorporate.
You can print it and just walk away.
Yeah.
Like you can do like a 2-hour print. You could do an 8-hour print and just walk away, and it'll just take care of itself. And unless, something, happens, but yeah, I think it's great.
The second question is from Dave. And this is a really good one.
As opposed to the last one, did you not like the first one?
Well, I just feel like if we covered that one so well, this one's going to probably be the rest of the episode. So this is a really in-depth question. You got a problem
with John, Amanda?
Right? Sorry, John. I didn't mean it. So this one's from Dave. It's equally as good a question as the last one. I've been woodworking for a number of years, and I'm always my worst critic. What types of things do you consider when making a piece of furniture that you would consider fine or professional level? For example, should fine furniture drawers have wood slides or undermount, dovetail or other visible joinery, solid wood or ply? For the case, grain, color, and direction reveal consistent... Well, let me rephrase this. For the case, grain, color, and direction reveal consistency and width, finish, hardware, placement, style, choice. I recognize these are all subjective and broad questions, and there isn't a perfect single answer. I'm just hoping to gain some of your perspective to consider when sitting down to design a project. I like many of the details, but not sure which of them are essential for fine furniture versus techniques that might be more about my woodworking journey. That was a long question, but
But a good one.
A very good one. Yeah.
This might be one of the... Sorry, it is better than the first question. Because it might be one of the best ones of all time.
It's a good one. Yeah.
This is... And then there's also 2 ways of answering this question. Because there's the way that woodworkers think about what makes something fine, and there's what the layperson thinks of as what makes something fine or elevated, whatever. I don't think most people think of fine woodworking as a level of work. But the interesting thing was he had listed like joinery, dovetails and blah, blah, blah as one set of criteria. And then there was grain and reveals. And I think that he broke it up into the 2 things that woodworkers worry about joinery and nobody other than a woodworker cares about dovetails. Like no one's impressed about dovetails unless you watched Norm Abrams. And you thought, that's how you're supposed to do things, right? But to me, it's always about grain match or grain direction, all of that stuff, and fit of joints. If there's gaps, we're wandering away from fine, and those are the 2 most important things to me.
Do you find that you get gaps in your pocket holes?
So your argument is that pocket holes... I see where you're going with this, and you came out swinging, dude. So pocket holes negate fine craftsmanship.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
There's a place for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an element too, is like knowing when to apply a certain technique. To me, that's an element of fine woodworking, is knowing when you need to like do a pocket hole versus do a, let's see, just a more elevated type of joinery. It's like making those judgment calls.
But what, like, other than the I know it when I see it kind of vibe, Amanda, like when you look at a piece and you think that is truly fine, what are the things that you're looking at that define that to you?
First for me is grain selection. Like that, you can have 2 pieces side by side executed at the same level with craftsmanship. And if one piece takes the time to like select the joinery, the grain direction properly versus just, whatever they yielded out of the project, that changes the piece entirely. So for me, that's the most important thing. To the point that, I'd argue that is single-handedly the most important part of fine woodworking is the board selection, the very beginning of the process, and being thoughtful about that. I'd agree with you on joinery, like being executed well. As in my apprenticeship, like Phil was just machine level joinery on everything. Like that was what he focused on. And I've found, like, as I evolved on my own, that I kind of appreciate little imperfections here and there when you can tell something's hand done, and like, little overcut on a dovetail or something. Like there's something to me about that gives it a different quality. But grain colored like direction would be foundational. And then I find that even with like simple little projects, I really focus on like edge treatment and reveals. Add so much to a piece that would otherwise. So
like round over or an area,
profiles.
Or something the profiles on the edges.
Like,
gotcha.
Being thoughtful about profiles and being thoughtful about reveals. Like that's another thing Phil kind of ingrained in me too, was he did reveals. A reveal on something like adds so much to a piece, in my opinion. I don't know how you guys approach like design and stuff, but I try to think about things like that. And I think like what's different from what you were saying is from a woodworker's perspective to like the client's perspective is like, they're going to notice, like I did a dartboard cabinet was my last big project that I completed. And, I have a potential client that like focused on, oh, I love the book match panels and the brass accent. And then like I was sitting with Tim Coleman at Fine Woodworking, New England, like afterwards at dinner. And he's like, a woodworker is like, I like how you did the kerf bent top. And like, it's a subtle thing. And I don't think people know how much work goes into that aspect of it. It's not as flashy or whatever, but it is like, he's like, that's more like, there's a lot more that goes into that piece than it looks like. And to me, that's also an element of it. Like, I don't know if we drive ourselves crazy with adding those little elements. I tend to do that. But to me, it's like, yeah, when I can see that the amount of work that's gone into a piece and it doesn't necessarily like become flashy or like stand out too much, that to me is like another element. But
I just feel the need to point out how you were able to really nicely slide in the fact that Tim Coleman paid you a compliment and
that
bring
was
it
like,
out to the public.
I've been waiting to talk about this. Like, maybe it's understated how excited I was about that conversation, but yeah, that was a moment for sure. God.
I think the answer to Dave's question is in his question. And so it's the word consider.
Oh.
And so to me, fine furniture is when you take the time to consider all of the aspects of what you're doing. So you start with not even the grain or the picture of what it's going to look like. It's like, what species, right? Like, am I going for a closed grained wood? Am I going for an open grained wood? Am I going for a wood that naturally has a lot of contrast, like an ash, where you see a lot of contrast just within itself. But then maybe it's like, okay, well, this piece doesn't really, I don't want that strong presence. And so you've considered that. And then you've considered, how do I take two pieces of wood, put them together to make a larger panel, and do it in a way that is like going to be the most pleasing? And again, things like most pleasing is to the eye of the beholder. But even like, I can appreciate somebody's design choices, even though it's not how I would have put two pieces of wood together. The fact that they considered it, right, to me then makes it a finer piece. And then you look at, because Amanda, you're right. If you just sort of saw your wood for yield and then start sticking it together, well, congratulations, you just made an 80s kitchen, right? Out of red oak, which has a really strong grain. And then you're looking at stiles with like half a cathedral cut, like right down the center. Yeah. And that's why everybody hates oak kitchens.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, if you did oak kitchens with rift-sawn frames and flat-sawn panels,
it's a totally different thing.
Put the golden oak stain on it, people would look at that kitchen and go, whoa, that's
a really good point. Yeah.
And then like the hardware, right? Do I just go to the home center and pick up something and slap it on there? Or do I, because there is in some cases, hardware that makes sense, right? That's already pre-made or, whatever that would, be a good option. But a lot of times it's the wrong size. It's the wrong thickness. It's the wrong color. It's the wrong. So I think like, and then finish. Like, is this a piece that's going to see a lot of hand touching? Or is this something that's going to be like on the wall, very, very, little sort of touching, and then so what do you want that feel to be? It's being considerate about every aspect of the build. And when you do that, regardless of your personal aesthetics, it comes through.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you just put like a 1/8" round over on everything, it's like, okay, great, but like what if that varied? Or what if it, got heavier in one spot and then lightened up a little bit? Or, you talked about reveals. I also like varying the weights of the thicknesses of the pieces. So if the outer carcass is 7/8, then I want the next inner pieces to be somewhere in the like sort of 3/4 range, and then 5/8 as you get into smaller elements of the piece, I want the weight of the pieces to diminish. And so that's what I like to do, but I'm taking the time to think that through and not just milling up a bunch of 3/4 stock and just throwing caution to the wind. So that's what I think it is. I think it's consideration.
I think you changed my answer a little bit, because part of the struggle that I've been having is so much of what I make is like, weaving accessories for my wife or something like that. And when I get done, I go, oh, everything fit perfectly. And everything's like I build these tools or whatever the same way that I would build a piece of furniture that I was trying to make fine. But at the end of the day, it is not a piece of fine woodworking. It is a rack for her to hold things in. And even though the field is melamine and the border is, pine that was just perfectly and precisely cut and entirely gap free and 100% as perfect as I can make it, it is not fine. It is a thing to hold weaving accessories in her studio, right? So there's a level of craft, like the level of expertise or craft that something is put together with is not necessarily the same as the consideration put into it while doing so. And I think I think you absolutely changed my mind about what the important thing is, because overall, it's not grain selection, it's consideration in selecting the grain. It's not, using mahogany. It's consideration in, just because it's an expensive piece of wood does not make it a fine piece of craft. Yeah, I'm a little bit rocked right now.
Yeah, that was a really good answer.
I'm glad you went last.
Okay, see you later.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so subjective, right? How you can, and I mean, if you listen to Eric Curtis's podcast, they do a lot of this sort of navel gazing. I mean, in-depth looking at things.
Link in the doobly-doo.
Just kidding, Eric. But it's like, to me, it's like, even like, Ben, even if you're making like tools, right? You've considered everything about that, right? And you realize that your wife is going to be using them and handling them. So you probably like ease the edges and like make it so that it's not going to be sharp. And like, because you've considered all of that. You just didn't leave it the way it was, or just put this thing together just because that was the expedient way to do things, right?
Well, no, but I think that those are... So, like, I'm thinking about specifically this rack that I made for her to hold things in. And it really was, like, at the time, it was like, that was one of the most well-made things I've made. Yeah. But honestly, the answer is that's just because it's the last thing I made, and it is more hours behind the craft that informs everything I do from here on out. So it's like the way that I fit things together is the way that I fit things together now, you know, from hanging out with y'all and Tim and Mike. And, you know, those are the things that now everything that I've learned from everyone goes into everything I do, whether it is fine or not. I think about a piece of booth furniture that I made for her where it was, the whole idea was for it to look more expensive than the furniture in the booth next to hers, you know, so that makes it easier for her to justify the expense of her woven goods, you know. But is it fine furniture? No, it is breakdown furniture that is, you know, goes together with 4 bolts and is just supposed to, you know, serve a very, very specific purpose. But I don't know if I've ever made a piece of fine woodworking then that I consider other than like maybe a box that I recently made for my kid. And I don't consider my ukuleles in this calculation, but like there's still a level that I strive towards in my work. And I think that mechanically I am capable of doing it, but I don't think I've ever done that thing that you're talking about, Vic, where like I sit there and consider every decision that is made and just focus on it that way. It's always been trying to get a piece built. So
interesting.
I'd almost argue like somewhere in between those two things, like, because the people you're getting experience from have done the same things for years at a time, right? So the reason they're making fine furniture is because what you're talking about, they've done these repetitive things. They put in the like years of work to get to that point. But there's also this like, what Vic's saying is the consideration, and the, like, which to me is like the thought of how to approach the knowledge that I'm trying to sum this up the best I can. The knowledge that you have from putting in all the time, sort of guides you through the consideration of the next project. Mm-hmm. It's like you have all this experience and things that you don't have to like second guess anymore. You've just done it, mm-hmm. which allows you to open the possibilities of what you do moving forward. I would tell Dave, like, making a shaker nightstand, simple mortise tenon joinery, like, can still be fine furniture if executed well. And then that gives you information to move into your next project. You're putting the miles in to get to the next step as a craft in the craft. Does that make sense?
Simple little things that you pick up that influence that. And it's not like I sit there and like think about every aspect of everything. It's just that after you've done a certain number of things and you've watched others do a certain number of things, it just starts to pop into your head as a thing that you should be doing. So for example, Michael Fortune, he was teaching at Rosewood and we were making some jigs because I don't know if you've heard, but Michael Fortune likes jigs. And so somebody was putting together a jig for something, and it was just made out of plywood. Like, it wasn't a like, this is going to last forever jig. This was like a let's just put it together jig. And they drove in a screw without a pilot hole. And Michael Fortune's face like distorted, and he's like, that is so inelegant. He's like, drill a pilot hole. Like, it just, to him, it was crass to just like, because then like the pieces don't come together well because you've broken out of one side and into the other, and then they don't come together well, and then the top gets all mangled, and to him that was just like, but I mean, you're driving like plywood screws into a piece of plywood. It's like, what's the big deal? But the big deal is the thought. It's like, you're going to get a better connection of these two pieces of wood that you're going to ask an awful lot of, because you're going to put a piece of your work on it and then put it over a machine, right? Do you want that piece being able to wiggle a little bit? And so it was just, to me, it was like, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
So I'm on both sides of that one, where it's like, if I'm making a jig and two pieces should be flush, if you were drawing it up on a piece of paper and the two pieces should be flush, at the end of the day, I want the two pieces to be flush.
Yeah.
Because that's practice. That is, one more experience of getting two pieces of wood perfectly flush, which is not easy, right? And that might be the one thing that gets me over the hump for the next one, That said, if I drive a screw through and it goes through the other end of the jig and I need to take a file to get the pointy bit of the screw off, I'll do that. I don't care. I just want to get the job done. The goal should be perfection, but I'm not going to stay up at night worrying about the gap on the jig. So yes, I think both mentalities are perfect for jig making. I want it to be perfect. But I think
the point is that if you do it while you're jig making,
I totally
you're going to do it. You're going to make that consideration, right?
Totally.
It's like, I don't remember who said this. I feel like it was Bob Van Dyke or something, but he talked about when he uses hardware, like screws or whatever, he lays them all out. Like when you reach into the bin and grab a bunch of 1" number 8 screws, he's like, because that a 1 1/4 made its way in there.
That's a good point.
I think it was him. I can't remember. But basically then he lines them all up to verify that they're all the same. Because the inelegant thing would be to have it drive all the way through and then poke out the other side. And then you're like, ugh. And it is an easy fix, like you were saying, Ben. Like you literally just take a die grinder and just you know what I mean? But when you consider the two options, one is a slightly more elegant option.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That actually literally just happened to me. I was helping my partner build a little coffee table.
Yeah.
And so I did a counter, or not countersunk, but set screws for the apron to screw into the top. Mm-hmm. And he traveled back home and he was attaching the top in his shop. And he goes, man, you didn't, I guess on the drill press or something, you didn't plunge deep enough with one of the countersinks. And I was like, there's no way. I was driving myself crazy. And then an hour later, he's like, oh my God, the screw is too short. Not that long, but yeah, it was just the same thing.
If you're going to make a mistake, that's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. Yeah.
I was sitting here driving myself crazy. There's no way that I did that. But yeah, he's like, oh my God, this is so dumb. But yeah,
also, if you're going to make a mistake, don't blame Amanda at the drill press.
Right? That's the first lesson.
That's
I'm sure you learned.
Words. I mean, come on.
It's like, excuse me, I know how to drill a hole. Thank you very much.
Right. Really throwing him under. It was not my intention to throw anybody under the bus in this, but
well, too late now.
Just on the record, though, I know how to use a drill press,
but that's amazing.
Just silence on the end of the phone after that one.
Crickets.
Well, that wraps another episode. Thanks so much for joining us this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review. That's always appreciated. And follow our YouTube channel. There's much more than just the podcast on there. Lots of really good resources. If you'd like to submit a question for a future episode, email us at shoptalk@finewoodworking.com. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
If you get in Poison Ivy, go to a hardware store. It's a brand. Okay. It's Grandma's Poison Ivy soap.
Oh, wow.
Or if you see it in the hardware store, just buy it to have it on hand.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just want the world to know about it. I'm very happy right now because of Grandma's Poison Ivy soap.